The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist, with Dave Hondel and Tom Kline.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Stage Door tonight. This is Dave Hondel, and we got, I don't know who that is, I think it's Tom.
It's Tom, yes. And you're not wearing a mask. Come on, it's a pandemic, dude.
Tom, this is great. How many masks do you have?
For the apocalypse, I kind of stocked up.
That's awesome. That's my favorite one yet, I think.
Oh, thank you. This one I figure I'm not catching nothing. I think this is an N95.
I think it is too. I was going to say last time I said, you never look better, but I think I'm changing my mind. I think you've never looked better today.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And actually, I'm double masking it, so let me, because, I cannot be.
That's awesome.
But I do think you've convinced me to catch it from the computer, so.
Definitely.
And I'll tell you, this again, pandemic hair. I can't take this anymore. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel better.
And I still have my short haircut, so I think in another couple of weeks I'm gonna have to start wearing a hat too.
So with this being, I guess this is third or fourth pandemic theater, we have a special treat today.
Yes, we do.
Today our guest is Matt Palm, who is the theater critic from the Orlando Sentinel. He covers all of the arts and theater kind of here in Central Florida. He's a big deal, and basically what's happened every year at this time of year, we would normally have the Orlando Fringe Festival.
That's right.
Which is, I'll let Matt say what it is, but it's been canceled like everything has.
Yeah.
But they're going to do some sort of thing where they're going to do a virtual online Fringe show that's free. Matt's got all the details, and we're going to have him explain to us that and what the hell's going on in the future of theater in the world.
Well, I'm excited to hear from Matt. I know Matt's been in his job for a long time, ever since I was in Florida, and this was several years ago. So we're excited to talk to Matt and see what he has to say.
Yeah, I think he's in the waiting room, so let me go ahead and bring him in. And we're back, and it's Matt Palm. He's here with us. How are you, Matt?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Hanging out at home, like everybody.
Like everybody, yeah. And Matt, this is Dave Hondel.
Good to meet you, Matt.
Is the person that runs this Stage Door Show. And for the people out there, I think everybody in Orlando knows who Matt is. Matt is the theater critic and art critic in general, I guess, aren't you? For the greater Orlando area?
Performing arts critic and just the general arts news writer as well for the Sentinel.
Yes. The one that we all love and adore, especially when he gives us a good review. The reason we talked about having you on here is because, as I think most people in the Orlando area know, the Fringe Festival was canceled. But I saw you put a thing out the other day talking about what's sort of going to happen in its place. So talk to me. What do we got coming up?
Well, they've taken a really sort of innovative, interesting approach. The Fringe officials are very specific that this is not meant to replace the Orlando Fringe Festival, because, how would you actually replace the Orlando Fringe Festival? Right. All the craziness and all the camaraderie and all the gathering, which are all the things that we can't have right now. So they've come up with a virtual solution that's called Fringe Today. And each day, when we would normally be at Lock Haven Park and the surrounding area seeing shows together, you can experience different aspects of the Fringe at home. So it's already underway. It's pretty exciting. It's a variety of shows. They've thought of everything. It's not just the performance shows. I mean, they are trying to make you feel like you could visit Visual Fringe by maybe they have like an art demonstration or like an art tutorial where you make art with professionals from the Fringe. Or they had, the outdoor stage is famous for, its music and its comedy. So they have some of that, some stand-up, some singing from, individual artists from home that we watch together. And I mean, it goes as far as even if you want to visit the beer tent or one of the bars, they have their bartenders teaching mixology, where, you know, learn to make a fun cocktail to help celebrate Fringe, as they call it, the Fringe that almost was.
Wow, I like that.
It's really a wide variety of stuff that they have in it, and it goes on all the way to Memorial Day, just like the regular.
Just like it regularly did, yeah. I'll tell you, I wish they had. How do you make those cheese curds? Because that's really what I would want.
I asked them about if they were going to do anything with Uber Eats or anything with, you know, food, having the Fringe food delivered to your door, but they thought that might be a bit unmanageable. Be sending food all over Central Florida.
Over, yeah, from Sanford to Lakeland.
Right.
Matt, now I know.
Sounds...
I mean, that sounds incredible. Actually, I think it's a very creative way to, you know, in the times that we're living in right now, to still have the Fringe Festival. Now, speaking of that, from your perspective, you know, being in the theater world for so many years, you know, what is in your mind, what is the future of theater? I mean, is this what we're going to see more of, even in the months to come, where we're not going to be able to really go to theaters as much as we had been, and we're going to see more creative things like this, and also, you know, maybe performances from home, or maybe an empty theater that's filmed, perhaps.
Right.
In your mind, what do you see coming in the future months, up to maybe a year or two, even?
Well, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I guess. Theaters really haven't yet fully grasped what they can do.
Yeah.
And part of it is the idea of there's sort of a psychological effect on an audience. You need people to feel safe. So even if, you know, politicians or whoever, the regulations start saying theaters can open, and, you know, maybe people will have to sit farther apart every other seat or something, people still might not come because they just might not psychologically feel up to it, no matter what they're being told. So that is a burden on theaters to try to figure out, well, how can we make people feel safe enough to come back? And then besides that, it's not just the patrons, it's the actual people who make theater. I mean, actors spend lots of time rehearsing very close to each other in closed spaces. Often they have to touch each other, you know, as part of the script, or, you know, there's whatever. And there has to be a way to do it without starting a contagion, you know, among the artistic folk. I mean, everyone probably knows, Tom, in your case, has maybe been in part of a show where, you know, a cold runs through the whole cast, or worse, the flu runs through the cast. I mean, you can only imagine what would happen if you know, COVID-19 started spreading throughout the cast. So there's a lot to work out with that. Now, for the professional theaters in town, we have several theaters who are equity houses who follow the union rules and employ union actors. Equity hasn't even really come up with the definitive rules yet on what the procedures will be for safe rehearsing. And I think a lot of theaters who aren't equity are kind of waiting for those rules as well, because that'll be a guideline for them. That'll be, you know, they do the research, they have medical experts, they have consultants. So, you know, anyone will be able to follow those guidelines, but we don't even know really what they're going to say yet. And as you probably know, Broadway is shut until the fall. So
I think it's going to be a while, and even the idea of, let's say that you had a small show, a small cast, and you filmed it in an empty theater. I'm here to tell you that when you hit that point where you're ready to perform before a live crowd, you kind of hit this moment where you're like, I don't know if this is even. You don't have that feedback of a live audience, and that opening night is always a reminder of, this show was funny. I forgot. You know, you start off reading it and going, oh, this is a funny show, if it's a comedy. And, you know, by the time you're in Hell Week, you're like, is it funny? I don't know if it's funny. It felt funny once. And then the audience comes and laughs, and you're reminded that, okay, yeah, it is. And you feed off it, and the performance feeds off of that. So the idea of doing virtual shows seems tough. I mean, you can pull it off.
And that is another thing when you ask about for theaters in coming months and forever long. A couple of the theaters now, Orlando Shakes and Winter Park Playhouse, have sort of given out a, you know, as definitive as they can be, is sort of a revamped official schedule for the next season. And they've pushed back their shows to October. You know, everything in the summer is canceled. In the fall, the beginning of the new season is pushed back even farther. So, I mean, you have to wonder, well, what's going to happen in these intervening months? But I think what theaters are struggling with is they don't want to no one wants to put out work that's below their best quality or their best efforts. And what Tom is talking about, I mean, part of that is without the immediate feedback of an audience, it's hard to do your best work. It's hard. I mean, you can say, well, if we have actors who are willing to stand on a stage and do a show, we'll just record it. But it's not the same, and it doesn't really reflect necessarily what a theater is capable of. So that is something else that they're struggling with, is how can we put our best foot forward during this? And, you know, several of them are doing very creative things, but they're on a much smaller scale because that's what this technology kind of lends itself to. Individuals doing something, you know, a short prepackaged video that you can watch for 10 minutes. But, you know, it's harder to do a full, you know, you not do a full musical in 2.5 hours. It's hard.
You can't, there's no way to do some big, although, I don't know if you saw it, Matt, and you couldn't probably do the whole thing, but I saw John Krasinski does Some Good News.
Yes.
And the first one or the second one, he had the cast of Hamilton that came on and did that opening number. I was like, oh my, that could be the future, but I don't know that you could do a whole show that way.
Right. You know I mean, it's a lot to ask of your audience. I have a story that's actually out today where talking about how live performers are trying to adapt, and is it working? I mean, are they really creating the sensation of you're with them live, or how that goes? And some of the patrons who I interviewed were funny in saying, you know, it's making us bad audience members, because when you're home, you can pick up your phone if it buzzes. You know, you can get up and go make popcorn if you feel a little hungry. I mean, it's very different than being a captive audience in a theater where you're riveted to the stage and you feel like you should be polite because those people can see you. I mean, I mean, it's literally changing audience habits already.
Yeah,
which is, an interesting sideline to all this. But the applause is another thing. I talked to some comedians and some pianists who work at like some of the piano bars around town and take requests and kind of, you know, read the crowd and read the mood. And, you know, if everybody's really rocking out, play their heavier stuff. If everyone seems chill, you know, play the old standards, whatever. And they all said this is hard. I mean, comedians depend on what the audience is laughing at to know kind of where their act should be going. You know, you can milk a joke 3 more times if everyone's really laughing at it, call back to it later on because you know it got a good response. And they feel like they're working in the dark. The same with the pianists. So like we're just sort of playing by instinct what we think people will be enjoying at home. Yeah. And watching the emojis, you have the little hearts and the thumbs up. Whatever on the screen, like, it's not the same as applause. It's just not the same.
It's not. I watched one of them last night. A friend of mine who's a local musician, and he would stop occasionally and be like, "Look at the hearts! Oh, look at the hearts!" But yeah, it's a bizarro kind of thing, and I don't know. It just the future's weird. The comedians, I think, even more so. Watching like the late night shows, Stephen Colbert, all those guys, Jimmy Kimmel and them, they're still funny. I'm sitting there laughing, but you can see them going like, I don't, you know, pausing for the laughter when you don't know if it's even there. Yeah. So yeah, it's a strange world. I do think shows like The Voice or American Idol are doing a really good job of having the performances. Like I'm like, okay, this is almost as good as the show, you know, but it's still not quite the same. But they're doing a decent job of putting on a performance. It's all pre-recorded, I'm assuming, and we're seeing it where it's edited in, all that. But back to the Fringe, all of that is free though, correct?
It is. I mean, I will tell you that it's technically free because it is. You can watch it, but of course, you're very strongly encouraged to tip the artist. As you know, the Fringe's business model is you buy a button when you attend anything at the Fringe Festival, and the button is what sort of supports the Fringe infrastructure, the renting of the venues and the marketing and you know the things that go into actually the Fringe administrative staff. When you buy the ticket to the show, all that money goes to the artists.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of the artists on the Fringe circuit are really looking, I mean, you know, they've already had weeks with no income, and they're looking at now as summer when they make all their money at Fringe festivals all across, you know, North America, possibly not having any. So tipping them is the equivalent of buying that ticket and making sure they get the money in their pocket. The Fringe executives were like, this is not about making money for us. The Fringe in particular. This is about getting some money for our artists, because they want them
Right.
to be able to come back next year. They want them to be able to keep making their art and doing their work. So
No, exactly.
able, and there's also the dichotomy of a lot of people have had their income greatly reduced, not just artists, people in all walks of life, suddenly have been out of work, or have had their hours cut, or just don't have the money they did. So, we're also understanding of that, I guess. We have to be. But if you can afford to
Tip?
to
Do they have a little tip jar kind of thing?
slip the performers a little something so they can get dinner.
Yeah, right.
Appreciate it, I know.
Well, one of the things, Matt, also, we have listeners all over the place, and we have a lot in the Northeast and the New York, New Jersey area as well. But, the Orlando area, for people that are watching us right now that don't realize how big of a theater community Orlando really is, I've been to Broadway shows and have been backstage, and the actors that are in these shows know about the Orlando theater community and the rep and all the really cool regional theaters, as well as the community theaters. But so Matt, talk a little bit if you can, about the theater community in Orlando, because you've been around it for years. Tell our viewers really about the theater community and what they can expect if they go to a show here in Orlando.
Well, we're very fortunate that we have a thriving theater community here, and I should mention as part of that, it's a thriving arts community in general. For a city our size, we have a full-time professional ballet company, we have a full-time professional orchestra, and then as well as several very good regional theaters, including, you mentioned the Rep, that's Orlando Repertory Theater, which is a nationally known theater specializing for shows for children and young audiences, family audiences. They develop new works there. They help co-premiere brand new productions for that will they're for kids, for the future of the theater industry as a whole. So we're very lucky. And of course, a big part of that is what everyone in the rest of the country knows Orlando for, is our theme parks, which employ all kinds of creative people. It's not just the people you see in the parades, although you might see them on our stages as well, doing shows in the evening. But just the amount of, costume people and makeup people and lighting people and show designer people and directors. And we just have many more creative people than most cities our size because of the theme parks. And a lot of them, enjoy their theme park jobs during the day. But if you've ever worked in a theme park setting, a lot of a theme park job is doing the same thing over and over. A lot of the theme park shows have 5 performances a day, 7 days a week. So they also like to stretch their wings a little, and that's where our theaters benefit in the evening, when after they've done their day jobs, they will, audition and perform in, regular plays, musicals, full-length works, cabaret festivals. There are all kinds of things that we have going on here. And we get sort of to take advantage of their talent just by the nature that they're here. And they creative people always like to be creative and do more and more. So we're fortunate in that regard.
Absolutely. I've told people that the difference between, nothing against the state of Kansas, but if you're a little town in Kansas and you have a community theater, and if you're a little town in Central Florida, we have a bigger talent pool. I'm sorry, we just do, for the reason you just said, Universal, Disney, SeaWorld, all of it. In fact, I have several friends in the theater world who work at the theme parks, but not in a performing capacity. And they're amazing piano players and actors and actresses. But yeah, we've got this wealth, and we are fortunate for that reason.
Creative people know they can find work here for the most part. The theme parks are always hiring. At the moment, of course, they're shut.
Not always.
In the same boat as everyone else. But in general, in normal times or more normal times, there's generally work to be found, and for creative people, it's not always easy to find steady work. So there's it's a draw. They come down here to try it out, to see what's available, and a lot of them end up loving our weather, our sense of community, the opportunities they have to perform in theaters, and they stay.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, and I was going to say too, for people to keep up on your previews, tell them where to find you. If there's everybody in Orlando knows how to find you, but people other places, because the rest of the world could watch this. You don't have to be in Orlando to see the Orlando Fringe this year.
Oh, that's right. That's very true. That's a good point. But you can always find my writing at orlandosentinel.com/arts. And the Fringe Festival, if you go to Facebook and search Orlando Fringe Festival, you will find their page where all these shows are streaming.
Nice. I'm planning on it. I was kind of like, when am I going to, when I saw your thing, I was like, yes, we still have a fringe of sorts. And anything is better than nothing. And I have been impressed with to creative people's ability to sort of start to adapt to this world. People are getting better at this stuff. And it's been amazing to me at how people have still managed to make creative things in a limited capacity like we're living in. So
and you can already see the quality of what theaters are putting out starting to go up.
Yeah.
They're learning. I interviewed Jim Helsinger, who's the artistic director of Orlando Shakes, which is a professional regional theater that's well known in the Southeast. And at first he said, you've got to give us a minute. We're all trying to, create our art in mediums that we're not that familiar with, trying to make videos. He was learning a video editing program, but he's never had to really worry about that before. And he said, but we'll get it. We'll get it. And sure enough, everything really, the quality is going up. I don't know if it can actually replace the live experience of being there. I mean, we all know if you've been in a theater, there's a buzz when you're in a theater that when the connection you feel with the performers is just different than watching on a screen.
For sure.
Yeah.
But for now, it's what we have. So.
Yeah, and it keeps us sane, I think, to be honest,
It does. And also the rights, that's the one thing, the question that I had also is the companies that you buy the rights from to actually show their production on a stage, everybody's being affected by this. It's not just the actors, the theaters, but it's also the rights companies, right? I mean, do we, if you show something on Zoom, do you have to buy the rights to do it? I mean, that's, I was always wondering about that.
Still pay for the rights, I would think.
Well, there's going to be a whole sticky legal situation about that. I think right now, like at the moment, rights companies are pretty sympathetic and they don't want 1,000 theaters to go out of business because that will obviously affect them in the long run.
Correct.
So they may be being a little kinder or turning a blind eye if you broadcast a performance of something you did last year but you already paid the rights for. Yeah. Maybe they're just letting it go. But depending on how long this goes on and how elaborate people, the productions that people want to start streaming, I think then there are going to be legal repercussions, or the legalities will have to be sorted out about how, because creative people, of course, also include the writers.
That's right.
of shows and musicals, and they are entitled to their piece of the profit
of the pie,
of the money, right? So that'll have to be figured out, and I think that's something that just opens a whole other can of worms. Just another thing on the list of the checklist of theaters of how do we operate in this situation? What do we do about paying for rights?
Right. Well, and one of the things
people might not know at home, rights, the price for rights for a show are often based on how big your theater is, how many people are expected to see it. So obviously the internet, your possible audience is infinite, or whatever the population of the earth is who has internet. So you can't really price that way. I mean, there'd have to be a whole new pricing model. It would really have to be thought about.
No, I hadn't thought about that aspect. One of the things I did think about where rights are concerned, like at Moonlight here in Claremont, we were planning on doing something rotten in September. That's an expensive show, and if let's say that we are even able to do it at quarter capacity, I mean at Moonlight that's probably 20 seats. Like we would have to figure out some way between the publishing house and the theater to go, this has to be viable for everybody.
Right.
And the something is better than nothing. I almost think they would have to go, we're gonna look at it like you're a 20-seat theater, and what do we got to do to make it where you can do this? Or just the alternative is just don't do it. Find something. In fact, one of my things is I have an original show that we canceled at Moonlight, but I'm like, royalty free. Like, you don't have to pay me nothing. I just want to see my show. So I've been really pushing that.
We might see more new original work because it's a way for theaters to do something while all the rest of this is being sorted out.
Yes,
so
exactly.
That could be a side effect of this time as we see more original, works, which is kind of what Fringe is about. Most Fringe work is work that the performers have created themselves. So there's no real right, they own their own rights. They're doing it themselves.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping they come back next year. I hope by then, for the love of God, we
I was
are.
gonna say, I think we're all hoping that by next
Yes.
summer we are in
Yeah.
a better position than we are today.
Yeah, wood's got it. It can't be a whole lot worse. So knock on wood. But listen, with that, I told you we wouldn't keep you too awful long. Thank you so much for joining us on this. And it's
Thank
great
you.
to see you again.
Oh, it's my
great
pleasure.
to see anybody again.
I know it's just nice to talk to people like face to face in this new world where face to face means you're looking at a screen. But
Yeah. But it's still face to face, and it's been fun and informative. And
Absolutely.
again, tell one more time, where can they find your stuff on the Sentinel? And then we'll let you go.
All right, it's orlandosentinel.com/arts.
And that's where you'll find Matt. And Matt,
Well, thank you so much,
and
Matt.
have a great rest of the week. And hopefully I'll see you at the theater sometime.
All right, you guys too. I hope to see you out there.
Thank you, Matt.
Have a good one, man.